Mirusia, welcome to noise11.com. Look what we've got here. The new album.
Oh, this is so exciting.
Hey, we've held a lot of these up over the years, haven't we?
I know. That's my 12th album. Can you believe that?
Well, see, I was trying to count. I came to 12, but then that's not counting Andre albums. That's not counting live albums.
Yes.
You know, like there's been DVDs and whatever in there. I think in terms of, and EPs as well. So I think in terms of all your total recordings, you're well over the 20 mark.
Oh, probably. There's so many. A lot of people come to my shows and when they come with an old record that I haven't seen in ages, they're like, oh, can you sign this for me? I never got it signed by you. And I'm like, whoa, blast from the past. I made that many years ago. I haven't seen that one in ages. So it's lovely. It's lovely to have a huge catalogue. And I often think about the legacy that I'm going to leave behind. And as an artist, you often think about that. You think, okay, when I'm gone, what have I left behind? What have I been able to bring to the world? What is this artistic thing that I'm leaving behind? And so, you know, I want to leave a legacy behind, and I want that to be not only recordings and music and things like that, but also with the work that I do for other people, mentorships and work that I do in aged care and with young children. There's so many things that I do. But this album, Classique, is probably one of my favorite records that I've been able to release. And it does really leave a legacy, so to speak, because it's always been my intention to record a classical album. And so many people often ask me, when are you bringing out just an album of opera and classical music? We love it when you sing that. And so finally we've released it, Classique. But it's kind of in memory of Dame Joan Sutherland, because she wrote to me when I won the Dame Joan Sutherland Opera Award. She wrote to me through the Noosa Federation of the Arts, who I won the award through. And she had listened to my first EP, She Walks in Beauty, which had a mix on it. It was opera, but it also had some pop songs, even a Japanese pop song, J-pop. You know, it had a mix of things because I am a classical crossover artist. And she had written and said, it would be so wonderful if you could pursue an operatic career because your voice really suits that style of music. And so finally, after all these years, I have done this classical recording and I'm so proud of it. So the first song also on the album, Je Veux Vivre from Gounod's Roméo and Juliette, Dame Joan Sutherland used to sing that so beautifully. And so, you know, she was a huge inspiration for that song, but also a few others on the record too.
Well, classique in the true sense of the word, I guess, because when we look at the various titles and shows that you're covering here with the Marriage of Figaro, Romeo and Juliet, as you mentioned, La Bohème, the Magic Flute, we're going back hundreds of years in some cases with some of these.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that the operatic world spans such a large span of time. I mean, if you think about Lascia Pianga, for example, which is on the album, this is Handel, and it's really, in a way, Handel is early music. You know, you can hear the harpsichord in there, and it's very different to something a little bit more modern, which I've released in previous albums. You know, where I sing things from even myself as a composer. You know, so I love the fact that my musical genre does span so much time with regards to composers, but the album itself, Classique, also spans so many decades of wonderful music. And it is really cool to be able to hear the difference as well when you listen to something written by Handel and then something that's written by Puccini or something that's written by Mozart. You do hear the differences in the style. But it's been so interesting to me also as a classical crossover artist. I have a fan base that also spans many different people who like different genres of music, and some of them may not be so well acquainted with the classical style. So bringing this album to them has been really interesting because I've heard so much feedback from people saying, oh, well, I never was interested in classical music, but hearing you sing these arias, I actually can't wait to see the opera. So that's been really, really great. It's kind of like a little bridge, like to fill that gap between classical crossover and purest opera, I guess.
What you've chosen with Mozart, the Magic Flute, is interesting in that Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart premiered that show on the 30th of September 1791, and then he passed away on the 5th of December 1791, just a couple of months later, and he was only 35 years old at the time.
So young, so young. And one of his earliest compositions we all know as Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, which I think he wrote when he was 5. So he was really incredible. What a virtuoso. And I mean, that legacy, again, we say the word legacy, but what he left behind musically is still being sung and performed today. And I think that that's incredible, because it's not only just in Germany or Austria or in Europe, but it's around the world. And I think that that's pretty incredible.
Romeo and Juliet, now in my research, so you could tell me if I'm wrong or not, Romeo and Juliet was first set to music in 1839, and then Tchaikovsky took to it in 1869, and I think he may have even come up with the very first template for theme music, you know, where you had the recurring theme in, say, you know, if it was going back to a certain scene, he'd have that recurring theme coming back for that scene, which is something that is common in pretty much every show. I mean, Andrew Lloyd Webber follows that exactly same template today.
Absolutely. And I will never regret the fact that I call Andrew Lloyd Webber a modern day Mozart. I mean, I honestly believe that. I know a lot of people think that that's ridiculous, but I don't. I honestly believe that's true. He is a modern day Mozart. And yes, the themes. And what's also interesting is associating a theme with a character. I love that, you know, when a certain character comes on, oh, that's their theme, and we know that they're now present and on the stage with us. I love that. And I think that that's wonderful. And as you said, yes, it has now transferred to what we hear in a modern day musical, or even in a movie. Even just the music that you hear in movies and in the background, you know, that's all very much thematic. And I love that. It's really fantastic. I also recently watched this new movie, Poor Things, which won all of the Oscars. And again, the music in that particular movie was so interesting. There was a theme there where at the start there was just a few little strings that you hear, and then at the end of the movie where she's grown into a human adult, that music is completely fuller, and so the music really carries through. And it's really quite incredible that that all stems from, yes, classical music, and a lot of things do.
Well, I guess a lot of these things we just take for granted these days. Have you actually studied the history of music and why we're now at a point that we arrived at because people like Mozart, people like Tchaikovsky invented it, you know, 100, 200, 300 years ago?
Yes, well, I studied at the Queensland Conservatorium of Music, and I did a Bachelor of Music in Performance in Operatic Voice, and so we studied a lot about the history of music, in particular of opera. But it is very interesting indeed to see also how we copy things, and we do that as humans. You know, we copy things that have happened in the past and we reuse them. It is very evident when you listen, for example, to a musical, that you can see, okay, well, that's based definitely on what happened in operas back hundreds of years ago. And again, that was then based on something that happened prior to that. So there is always that, I guess, human element to, oh, we see something from the past and we reuse that, or we reinvent it in a way. And that constantly happens also throughout our music that's released today. With pop music, for example, we always hear elements of things inside music that relates to something else from the past or to a particular culture, things like that. So it is evident. The thing that's really interesting in modern day music is obviously the invention of computerized sounds and things like that. I do feel, though, you know, when we sort of started really using that synth sound in the 80s, when we look back at that now, we go, oh, you know, I probably wouldn't want to use that today. It's very dated, and it didn't date very well. However, you know, I wonder how it will be like in 30, 40 years when we start to listen to the music of today, And we go, ooh, that didn't date well either. So it is really interesting. But then I wonder if in 100 years or 200 years, what we're hearing today will be classified as classical music. It's always really quite interesting to see how time progresses, and things that, like Rodgers and Hammerstein, for example, or Gilbert and Sullivan, when it was released in the day, it was like a modern day musical. But nowadays we sing it and we think, oh, well, that's very similar to operetta and like a Franz Lehár. So, it's quite interesting.
Well, when you talk about modern day musical, La Bohème by Puccini, which you cover on this new record, La Bohème by Puccini, written between 1893 and 1895, over a 2-year period, premiered in 1896, and the first performance in Australia of that was on the 13th of July 1901, just 5 years later. So you talk about a modern musical. In 1901, La Bohème being performed at a Majesty's Theatre in Melbourne, Australia, for the very first time in Australia, 5 years after it was written by Puccini. That was a modern day musical when it premiered here.
Yes, it would have been, and people would have been very excited to hear that new composition.
What I do know, though, is La Bohème by Puccini, when it was first performed, received exceptionally bad reviews, subdued, and the critical responses were polarized, it is written. But here we are 200 years later talking about it.
And we love it. And there's musicals based on it. Rent, for example, which is, I believe, currently touring Australia. That's based on the story of La Bohème. And they sing it, Viva Bohème, or whatever it is they sing. La Vie Bohème, I don't know what they're singing. But yeah, it's all very much based on that particular opera. So, and the storyline is very similar, although it's been modernized. And I love that. I love the fact that, and again, that just shows you another example of how we reuse things. So we reuse the storyline, we reuse almost, the whole theme of it, the characters, everything, and then we modernize it, put it in what we would say in the Netherlands, a new jacket, and present it again. And people will go, wow, amazing, incredible, a new musical. It's really quite lovely how we do that as humans.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting that you say that with La Bohème and Rent. When we look at the Marriage of Figaro and the story of the Marriage of Figaro and Susanna, you could make that, Barry and Elizabeth for all we care. Succeed in getting married, foiling the efforts of their philandering employer to seduce Susanna and teaching him a lesson in infidelity.
That's right.
That could be the plot for a movie that's on Netflix today.
Or even on the Hallmark Channel.
Probably more to the point, yes.
It probably already is. But yes, it is. But what's so wonderful is that all of those operatic arias that I have been able to record, or even just, the songs, the arias that sit on their own, like Il Bacio from Arditi, The Kiss, or Ave Maria from Schubert, they all have a story about them. They all have a rich history about them. And there's so many people who have sung these arias in the past and done interesting things with them. And it is such a joy to be able to, in 2024, record an album of these songs and these arias and release it to the world and still have people engaged with that style of music. And that's what I love so much about this genre of music, classical music, is it is timeless, and there will always be somebody who loves it.
Well, classical music, I guess, would be perceived as old people's music. The music your grandparents listened to. When somebody such as yourself, Mirusia, performs something like this, you're actually taking it to a new audience. I would imagine that a lot of the people who come to see you would be hearing a lot of this music for the very first time.
Yes, it's true. A lot of them have heard some of these arias only for the very first time. And a lot of people are dragged along to my concerts. Mum and dad want to go, and they're like, come on, kids, let's go. And the kids are like, oh, I don't know what to expect. I don't really know if I want to be there. But at the end, they're all they're all turned into classical music lovers, because it is impressive and it is beautiful. It's emotional. I think that's one of the key words, is that emotion. you can't sing this music without emotion, and it was written with emotion. It is just most of the time tugging at the heartstrings type of singing, and I guess that's what people love. It's entertaining as well, and I guess it's something a little bit different because it's not something that you often get to hear as well.
Well, you've got a whole stack of shows coming up for the Classique Tour of 2024. What I'm seeing at the moment is Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. Will that spread around the country?
Yes. So we've done our Queensland date and we are heading, down the East Coast. We're so excited. I've got Graham Press, who is my musical director, who'll be on piano and conducting, and we have string players, and it's just going to be so fun to bring this album to life on the road. Touring is so wonderful as well, and it's so great to be able to go back on tour again. And this particular concert will not only feature opera and classical songs, but also some of my own original works, some musical theatre, some of the songs that people just know and love and want to hear. But there's also a really great opportunity for the audience to choose what I'm going to sing next. We have an audience participation segment where I basically say, okay, you've got a choice now of these 3 songs. We're going to do a vote, and we're going to vote which song you want to sing next. So every concert is different because every audience votes for a different one. And we've had quite a few little tips in the audience as well, where people have said, no, but I want that one. And the other, no. And it really makes for quite an entertaining moment in the show. So yes, it is really delightful to be able to head out on tour with this particular concert, and with the theme classique. You know, it's talking about classical music, but also things that we turn into classical music or can rehash into classical music. Again, getting back to our theme of reusing things.
Yeah. Have you got the band and all the backing singers in place? Are there any positions? Because someone here would like to join your band.
Oh my gosh!
We have some great vocals that can come out of here.
Well, I've got one here too.
Winston, there's a friend. It's a putty cat.
Maybe my cat can sing "Memory" from Cats.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah. All right. And Winston can play drums with those little paws of his.
And how about the theme tune from Paw Patrol? I think that would be wonderful.
Well, it's about time you probably did a kids album.
Well, who knows? Maybe that's next. It depends on how many requests we get for it. But I don't know if my label and my manager, Robert Rigby, will be happy about that. However, with enough requests, maybe it's an option. I would love to do that, by the way. That would be lots of fun.
I think if you did a survey just around inside your own household, you would probably get a, yay, Mum!
Yes, Mum, please. No, I think my daughter, she's loving the fact that Mum is on stage. She tells everybody, we'll be in Coles and I'll be incognito. And then she'll say to a random person, that's my mum. She's a famous singer. And I'm like... She's very funny, but she wants to be on stage all the time. And I keep saying to her, you don't have to do that. I don't want to push her. I don't want to be one of those stage mums. But she really loves it. And she does often make an appearance on stage during a matinee because she's around then. And she likes to have a little sing on the stage as well. So if you come to a matinee show, perhaps Sasha will be there too.
Just alert equity. We need to make sure she gets the standard rate. Mirusia, great to catch up. The album Classique, number 12. We'll call it number 12. There it is.
Album number 12.
And good to see you again. And
lovely.
Thanks for joining us here at Noise 11.
Thank you so much.